You wake up, and the first thing you do is check yourself. Not your body, not your thoughts, but your reflection. The reflection of your worth. How many people noticed you? How many approved? How many validated the version of yourself that you performed yesterday? This is the quiet tyranny of the performance society, as Byung-Chul Han describes it. A world where we no longer need masters because we've become our own. We exploit ourselves, and we call it freedom. If this sounds familiar, stay, because what you're about to hear might explain why love feels so empty, why connection feels so fake, and why you're exhausted even when no one's forcing you to do anything. We used to live under external oppression. The shoulds came from outside, from religion, from authority, from family. Today, they come from within. We whisper them to ourselves every morning. I have to improve. I must be better. I need to be seen. And that's how control evolved into self-control. Punishment turned into self-discipline, and submission transformed into performance. We've become the entrepreneurs of our own image. Every post, every word, every gesture is a pitch, an audition for belonging. And because everything is performance, nothing feels real anymore. Not even love. You see, in this new economy of emotions, love has become a mirror, not a meeting. We don't fall in love with others, we fall in love with how they make us look. We seek partners not for intimacy, but for reflection. Do you make me feel successful, desirable, admired? This is narcissistic love, the love of the reflection, not the person. Byung-Chul Han calls it the eros of sameness, a desire that avoids difference because difference demands effort. We seek only what confirms us, what validates our image. And so the moment someone challenges that image, by being too real, too demanding, too human, we retreat. We ghost. We scroll away. Because in the society of performance, even relationships must be optimized. What's tragic is that this cycle feels voluntary. You think you're choosing it. But the truth is, you've been trained to confuse productivity with purpose. You can't rest, not because someone forbids it, but because you've internalized the whip. You can't be still because silence exposes the emptiness inside. The performance must go on. Even your pain becomes part of the show. You post your burnout. You aestheticize your suffering. You curate your depression so it looks meaningful. This is the narcissism trap, a self that feeds on its own reflection until nothing real remains. Jung once said that the greatest tragedy of the modern man is that he lives without a connection to his own soul. And Han takes it further. He says the modern self no longer even knows it has one. We've replaced the inner life with the public one, our depth with data, our silence with noise. We think we're expressing ourselves, but we're only exhibiting ourselves. And what is exhibition without witness? Loneliness. That's why the narcissist is always lonely, not because no one loves him, but because he cannot receive love. He's addicted to his image, and images can't touch. If you've ever felt unseen in a relationship, even when you're physically there, if you've ever looked into someone's eyes and realized they weren't looking at you, but through you, searching for their own reflection, then you've seen the trap from the inside. The performance of love, the mimicry of connection, the illusion of intimacy built on mutual validation. It's not that people have stopped loving, it's that love itself has been reformatted, converted into attention, quantified by interaction, and drained of mystery. And when mystery dies, love becomes predictable. Predictable love is safe, but safe love is lifeless. Byung-Chul Han writes that we live in the era of psycho-political control, a form of domination that doesn't repress, but seduces. It makes us want what enslaves us. It makes us fall in love with our own prison. We don't fight oppression anymore. We perform it. Beautifully, voluntarily, publicly. We hashtag our chains. We monetize our burnout. We measure our worth in engagement. And deep inside, something ancient is screaming, "This isn't me." But you silence it because authenticity doesn't sell, vulnerability doesn't trend, and rest feels like failure. So you keep smiling, you keep producing, you keep pretending that your exhaustion is a badge of honor. If this resonates with you, stay until the next part, because what comes next is the hardest truth of all. How self-exploitation destroys your capacity to love, how emotional burnout makes you numb to beauty, and how to start seeing through the mirror that keeps you trapped in yourself. This isn't just a theory, it's the anatomy of modern despair.
The moment you begin to see the trap, it's already too late. Because recognition doesn't set you free, it just removes the comfort of ignorance. You start noticing the machinery beneath the surface, how every like is a microdose of validation, how every silence feels like rejection, how even your sense of self-worth depends on a feedback loop you don't control. You are no longer being manipulated, you're manipulating yourself. And this, as Han warns, is the most efficient form of domination. When control becomes internalized, resistance becomes impossible. The whip is now inside the mind, and it whispers the sweetest lie: you are free. We call it self-improvement, but it's just another ritual of self-sacrifice. We destroy our peace in the name of potential. We mutilate our emotions to stay functional. We wear our anxiety like a medal. Because in this culture, rest is laziness, silence is weakness, and love, real love, is a distraction from your goals. You can't stop performing, even for yourself. You're terrified of what might surface when the performance ends. And that's the heart of it. The fear of seeing who you are when no one's watching. Byung-Chul Han says we live in a society of transparency, a world obsessed with visibility. We no longer have secrets, shadows, or sacred spaces. Everything must be exposed, shared, monetized. But transparency kills depth. A soul that's always visible stops existing as a mystery. And without mystery, there is no intimacy. That's why relationships today feel so fragile. They're built not on depth, but on exposure. A mutual exchange of images, not of selves. You say, "I love you," but what you mean is, "I love how you reflect me." You want to be seen, but you don't know how to be known. We crave mirrors, not windows. Reflections, not connections. Validation, not vulnerability. And yet, we call it love. The tragedy of the performance society isn't just burnout. It's emotional emptiness disguised as success. You become fluent in expressing feelings you don't truly feel. You post your empathy. You caption your pain. You perform authenticity until the mask fuses with your face. Eventually, you forget which parts were real. Han calls this the fatigue of the self, a tiredness that doesn't come from effort, but from exposure, from being constantly seen, constantly producing, constantly proving that you exist. You're not exhausted because you do too much. You're exhausted because you've turned your own being into a project. And the worst part? Love becomes another project too. You try to optimize it, control it, make it efficient. You turn intimacy into performance. You measure its worth by how productive it makes you feel. You start to think love should make you stronger, more successful, more you. But love was never meant to make you more. It was meant to make you forget yourself. Real love interrupts performance. It forces you to stop performing, to collapse, to reveal, to be vulnerable enough to be seen without filters. But to someone trapped in self-exploitation, that kind of surrender feels like death. So, we avoid it. We choose admiration over affection. We choose control over chaos. We choose the idea of love over its actual risk. And little by little, the soul withers, not from heartbreak, but from emotional starvation. Because when everything is about me, there's no room left for us. Jung would call this the triumph of the persona, the mask devouring the man. And Hahn would say that the mask has become the self. The performance no longer hides anything. It is everything. You perform strength until you can't feel weakness. You perform confidence until you forget how to doubt. You perform love until you no longer remember what intimacy feels like. You become a mirror that reflects endlessly, but never receives. That's the final stage of narcissism, a self so self-absorbed it ceases to exist as a self at all. But here's the paradox. Within that collapse lies the possibility of rebirth. When you reach the point where performance fails, where nothing you do can fill the void, you're standing at the threshold of something real. That silence you've been avoiding? It's not emptiness. It's space. Space where authenticity can grow again. Space where you can stop being a brand and start being a being. And love, true love, begins there. Not when you perfect yourself, but when you stop using yourself as a project. When you can sit in stillness and let another person see you. Not the version you built, but the one that trembles underneath. That's the beginning of healing. Byung-Chul Han never offered a formula for freedom. He only held up a mirror. And in that reflection, he asked us one question. What if the burnout you feel is not a sign of weakness, but a sign that you've been fighting against your own soul? If this truth cuts deep, don't turn away. Stay with it. Let it hurt. Because the wound is the only place where the real you can breathe again. And maybe that's what it means to be free. Not to perform your worth, but to remember it. Not to project yourself outward, but to reclaim yourself inward. Freedom isn't another goal to achieve. It's the quiet courage to stop performing, even when the world is still watching. If this resonates, stay close, because this isn't just a theory. It's the post-mortem of modern love and the autopsy of our times. Welcome to Psychofacts, where the shadows speak louder than the light.